Alright, this is part 2 of I Was for Sale, and this is from the introduction. As far as I can recall, I wasn't sexually abused as a child, though I probably would have enjoyed that. I did get a lot of slaps in the face from my mom. They were more like smashes, which I definitely didn't enjoy. I had lots of little friends in the neighborhood, both boys and girls. For reasons not clear to me, we all often played very rough role-playing games, and I was usually cast as the victim. For example, when we played Tarzan, I was invariably the helpless white woman lost in the jungle, which meant that my little male friends could spring up behind me, throw me to the ground and straddle me, pretending to tear off my clothes and rape me, although none of us had a very clear idea of how rape was exactly achieved, since we didn't know anything specific about sex at that age. Another good game was Roy Rogers. For us, it was a chance to strap on toy cowboy pistols and tie each other up, except I was the one who seemed to get tied up the most. I really enjoyed it, too. One day, my little friends tied me up very securely and left me there and forgot about me. I gleefully struggled out of my bonds, although I couldn't figure out how to get the toy handcuffs off my wrists. I had a little cowgirl outfit complete with embroidered felt cowgirl hat, and ran up the driveway, laughing, my hand still cuffed. My grandma was there in the backyard, and at first looked alarmed that I was in partial bondage. But when she saw how much I was enjoying it, she just laughed and went back inside to her telly. Violent games continued to be a part of my childhood. There was a television series at the time called Combat, and the Catholic family with 4 kids who lived downstairs from us, the McKees, simply adored this program. I would often watch it with them and felt very shocked at the images of the poor, dirty soldiers behind barbed wire, but the McKee kids had a huge collection of plastic army men and would set up elaborate war scenarios in their parents' dining room and make extremely impressive noises imitating bombs, hand grenades, and machine guns as they killed each other. They assured me war was wonderful, and the most honorable part about it was getting wounded. I quickly developed a fantasy I'd play in my head at night, after lights out, in which I was a male soldier getting wounded. I imagined myself falling into the mud somewhere behind barbed wire, bleeding to death. Then I'd have a sort of kitty orgasm and fall into a contented sleep to dream about pain, loss, and destruction. You're probably thinking I'm trying to blame my violent childhood fantasies on TV, and maybe I am at that. Remember that show, My Living Doll? Julie Newmar played a robot in the shape of a statuesque female, misplaced by the American government and turned up in the bachelor pad of some lucky fool who was too decent a fellow to request her to give him robotic blowjobs. Sexier still, she had a hidden off button in the nape of her neck, and when touched there, she would go limp, and I suppose the bachelor type could have had his merry way with her, though he never did. Of course, being such a good American citizen and all. Besides watching the late Elizabeth Montgomery in Bewitched, who could have satisfied any of her straight husband's fantasies with a twitch of her nose, but who instead joyfully cooked him casseroles from scratch, there was Barbara Eden as Jeannie, who was held in perpetual bondage in a tiny bottle until she was liberated by her master, another good citizen, career military no less, who steadfastly refused to allow her to satiate him, though she never gave up trying. And let us not forget the character of Catwoman in the TV series Batman. The part was written for Eartha Kitt, who played the feline criminal for a few episodes until either the American public decided she was a little too dark for a starring role, or the Johnson administration decided to step up their blacklisting of her for being outspoken against the war in Vietnam. You choose. I was sorry to see Eartha go, but was promptly rewarded with, yes, Julie Newmar in lycra, stilettos, a mask, and torpedo tits. My final forays into television bliss were watching Robert Conrad in Wild Wild West do all his own stunts while wearing incredibly tight pants, and of course, Diana Rigg as Emma Peel in The Avengers. I vowed that someday I'd be just like her, false eyelashes, terrific leather boots, periodically tied up by the bad guys. I was date raped when I was 17. A friend from another high school arranged a blind date for New Year's Eve 1975 for me. I went out with the brother of a friend of a friend. His name was Russ, and he was several years older than I was. He drove me to a far suburb where about 10 people sat around awkwardly and had cocktails. I was quickly tipsy and amorous. I think he put something in my drink. He took me into a bedroom, and I don't remember what happened next, except I kept saying no. And I was dropped off at home, disheveled, drunk, my clothing torn, to nurse a hangover the next day, and feel intense pain in my private parts for about a week. I went back to work at McDonald's and decided right then and there I hated all men. They couldn't be trusted. I became aggressive and flippant with them in my last 6 months of high school. Suddenly the boys liked me, and I was asked out on dates. I led them on and rejected them, usually telling them I suspected I was gay. I enjoyed seeing their confusion. The year before, I'd had a real sort of boyfriend. His name was Kevin, and he was in my creative writing class. I looked like a boy until I was about nearly 20. He looked at me one day in class and said, "Lisa, have you ever been to a gay bar?" "No," I replied, not even knowing what a gay bar was. "Are you free Friday night?" "Sure," I said. "Oh boy, a date." I told my parents I was going with some friends to the midnight movies in Cleveland Heights, and Kevin took me to Twiggy's place in Cleveland. Kevin made it clear he wouldn't touch me, that he was in love with a guy several years older than he, who was named Joey, but that he'd enjoy my company at Twiggy's, and I of course agreed, falling instantly in love with Kevin. Twiggy was a transvestite, maybe a transsexual, who ran a little dive down on St. Clair Avenue near Lake Erie. I was underage, but they let me in. Kevin and I drank Busch beers, and he'd split off from me to chat or to cruise with other male patrons. I felt at home in this place, even felt a kind of glamour in it all. Disco music was just becoming big, and it was fun to dance to Gloria Gaynor music. Out in the parking lot in Kevin's car, we'd smoke pot. I was speechless, crazy in love with him. I understood he wasn't capable of being a real boyfriend to me, but I adored him anyhow. When I was 18, I tore myself away from the TV set long enough to wander off to a mediocre art school in the Midwest. I needed to figure out some way to earn pocket money to go see Devo when they played in the local beer bar. So I got a job in the art department as a nude model. I also worked as a dishwasher from time to time. Getting naked or scraping garbage off dirty plates and loading a big hot machine really seemed the same to me, as they both paid minimum wage, and they both paid for my growing habit of ordering punk rock records by mail. The nude modeling seemed a little bit easier on the manicure, however. So I guess that is where my preference for posing got solidified. Around 1976, everyone I knew in art school seemed to be dropping out and moving to New York to be involved in the music scene there, so I did the same a year later. When I told my mother I was going to move to New York and start a new life there, she said to me, "You'll only end up a bum." I was furious with her, cried, and arranged to leave the Midwest promptly and settle in the East Village. Of course, mothers are usually right. I did indeed end up a bum in many ways. Okay, part 3 next. This will be chapter 1 from the book.